introduce myself really quick. I'm Scotty Strachan. I'm a research scientist, and I'm the principal research engineer for Nevada Net. So that's the Nevada network connector for our state. And I'm joined by a number of CIOs here that represent a variety of institutions in terms of size and perspective. And we're going to go right on down the line and let them each introduce themselves, their IT organization, and a little bit of background about their institution. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and take it first?
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Scotty. Matt Riley from the University of Illinois, Chicago. I've been a CIO there for about 4.5 years now. Just the profile for University of Illinois, Chicago, we have about 34,000 students and $500 million in annual research. Of course, a lot of anxiety about what that's going to look like in the future, and a lot of things that I hope to share in this panel. And I'll pass it on to Ann.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Milkovich, and I am the CIO for the Nevada System of Higher Education. And we run shared digital services at scale for the public colleges and universities in Nevada. There are 8 institutions. My organization is about 85 people. And one of the primary services that we offer is Nevada Net. And one of the best things I did in my 6+ years of being there was hire Scotty and then get out of his way so he could go do all this cool research stuff, which has been really good for us. We are the REN connector for the state of Nevada, and Nevada Net also serves K-12s, rural healthcare, state agencies, and we have about 300 sites, nodes in the state of Nevada where we connect anybody to Nevada Net that has a research or education component to their mission can connect to Nevada Net to get onto internet too. And we are also deploying Eduroam throughout the state. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sashi Pillai. I'm the Vice President for IT and CIO at University of Nevada, Reno. I've been there 2 years. So when we're talking about research expenditures, we're about half the size of Matt, about a little over $200 million. But there are lots of opportunities to grow, notwithstanding all the things that's happening in the country these days. For example, we do have a medical school, but we gave up the medical practice in terms of clinical care to one of the regional healthcare providers, Renown. So now what we're trying to do is to work with them to create a partnership where our medical school faculty have access to clinical data by which they can publish. As you all know, one of the biggest ways to increase your research expenditure is in biological and medical sciences. So we are redoubling our efforts to have access to clinical data, creating what I would call secure enclaves for our faculty to be able to do that in a secure manner. The whole idea of regulated data environments in the cloud will significantly advance our ability to do more research and significantly thereby increase our research output. So we'll talk more about that. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Zach Rossmiller. I'm the CIO at the University of Montana. I've been CIO there for about 4 years. In 2022, the University of Montana received R1 designation, and we actually just renewed it for the second time this February. So back in 2018, we slowly started building our research computing environment with the central IT organization, and from there, we've built out a full HPC cluster, a data storage cluster. We're also very connected across the state, where we have 3 community colleges, 2 tribal colleges, and a lot of other different campus affiliates connected through the University of Montana. And we also have an active NSF grant right now that's working with the other 5 tribal colleges in Montana to work with them on getting them connected to the university. So, happy to be here.
Great. Well, thank all of you for introducing yourselves and kind of giving an idea of the scale of operations and the history of your institutions with regards to research activity. So what I'm going to do now is just give a quick little background on what this panel's objectives are, and then we're going to go into a set of questions and discussion that the panelists can use, but we also want this to be an audience interactive event. So those of you who are out there that have questions, perhaps follow-up questions or comments regarding the discussion that happens up here, once we get going, please feel free to engage. I don't know about you, but my adventures on how I get to these conferences sometimes involve interesting places. So in this case, like Death Valley, for example, perhaps that involves a little risk and a little curiosity. And the researchers in my ecosystem, to get to Internet 2 and anything outside of our campus and state border can also be an adventure sometimes. And we're seeing that as a challenge to try to smooth that adventure up so that it happens, with more, let's say, fulfilled expectations in terms of time and research delivery and that sort of thing. Getting IT and the IT culture to help us reduce the researcher friction and to improve the overall operations of how things work on a day-to-day basis for students and faculty members is the end goal. And so it might take a lot of patience sitting there waiting for the sun to come up after you've set up camp and built your infrastructure, but the result is worth the effort. And so those of you, if you are in the middle of this at your institutions or from whatever organization you're coming in from, where you're trying to pivot a little bit towards serving research better as we have all of these cool new tech opportunities, I'd encourage you to keep that up. And I hope that our discussion here is motivational and gives you ideas. So the first question that I really have for our panelists here is, it's kind of a basic, you would think it's a no-brainer, and those of you who are from top 50 or top 80 institutions, you may think, well, of course it's science and engineering research is part of the core institutional mission, but you would be surprised when you get kind of below that top 50 or top 80, if you went around and asked this question to people in the enterprise IT organization, they may give you a very different answer. And so this is something that I'd like our panel to address a little bit. How do you, from your positions as IT leaders, at these institutions that already have lots of research going on and you're looking to grow that, how do you view this in terms of priority and institutional overall mission? Who would like to start us?
I could start. Okay. I could start. I think one thing that a CIO can do, and Zach is aware from my time at University of Montana and also at University of Illinois Chicago, is make enhancing research and growing research expenditures part of the IT mission. Part of our goals. It's one of our top 3 goals. We support students. We work to enhance all things innovation and research. And with particulars of growing research expenditures. And then we also modernize the infrastructure, and that also helps research. But just by making it a priority for the IT organization and then walking the walk, so you're both supportive of your, in my case, an ACIO for research, innovation, and high-performance computing, give that person every bit of support, but also help to bring the others in the IT organization toward the research mission, especially for secure enclaves like we talked about. That's going to require a lot of cross-team integration of effort. Our CTO has to be aligned to that, and folks who do things like system administration and network administration, our network engineers, they'll have to, inherit some of those things that are needed for the research community in ways that maybe they didn't do before if that was not a focus. So that's where I would start, or have started.
I'll go next. So I personally think, and as part of you look at our strategic plan, like Matt said, we highlight the fact that we want to change the world. So, starting with locally in Nevada and then working our way up. And if you look at that, it's all about research and providing a quality education to our students. But part of it comes, the dilemma that I see is the role of the central IT organization and how do we contrast and compare that responsibility in serving the research needs of the institution. There are common threads, for example, storage, architecture, networking. These are all common elements. We don't need to create a separate environment for research and then for administrative purposes. The more infrastructure that you can share, that will benefit both sides of the house would be beneficial. But of course, there are unique areas. So you need very high-speed storage that's closely located to your high-performance cluster that will benefit in terms of high-end calculations, which is kind of different than some of the administrative functions. But the idea is to be able to provide that environment seamlessly so the researcher can essentially live in both worlds is a key to success. So these are some of the things we are exploring as we move forward. Just to give an idea, in my previous institution, after we deployed the cluster, within a few years, we're submitting over $100 million worth of proposals. Similarly, we stood up a research enclave, secure enclave. Within 6 months, we had 100 instances of secure enclaves where our researchers were working with the regulator data in the cloud. So these things are possible to really create the momentum for really providing the capabilities that our researchers have been asking for many years.
I'll jump in with a slightly different perspective. Since I work at the system level supporting all of the institutions, we have 5 institutions whose primary mission are that they're community colleges, and so educational access is primary for them. We have 3 institutions for whom science and engineering research, I would say, is primary to their core mission. UNLV and UNR, or University of Nevada, Las Vegas and University of Nevada, Reno, are both R1 institutions, which were granted in the last 5 years, I think. And then we have the Desert Research Institute, which is solely research. They do not grant degrees. They are just what I call planetary sciences. It's beyond Earth sciences and well beyond being just desert research. So I cover that spectrum and have to be aware of that, but it's been very exciting to see our research endeavors becoming a bigger part of our enterprise mission in building out regional infrastructure and support of field sciences. So the answer for me is yes.
I really like what Sashi said about changing the world, because when you look at the research that any university is doing, they're truly making differences in the world. And like I look at the University of Montana, where we do everything from climate to fire to medical, and some of the research that is coming from our university has changed and shifted some things. And so I look at it as, yes, it's a core value and a core piece of our mission, because it's changing the world, it's driving innovation, it's reputation, it's attracting world-class faculty, world-class students, and it has to be part of your core mission. So,
Yeah, I think your point about if you're a university, that means you have a graduate school. If you have a graduate school, that means you're doing science and engineering research. If you're doing that, that means you have to support it from IT, and that leads to the retention and recruitment of excellence. And so that's how you can grow an institution. I'm going to go to the next question here, which should be coming up. Okay, so if research innovation is a key driver of excellent education and workforce development at universities, how should the traditional enterprise IT, the last 20 years, foundationally engage this?
You want me to go ahead?
Go for it.
Sorry, Ann. I'll quickly go through the university for our journey real quickly, and then kind of share what we're doing now. So it was the typical servers under the desk. The researchers wouldn't trust IT because they didn't want them to be in their way and they didn't understand what research was doing, and blah, blah, blah. For the last 6 years, it's been relationship building, working with the research faculty, understanding what they're doing, but then also getting staff in front of the researchers to make them understand the language and the sciences behind it. And it's interesting because enterprise IT has always looked at the Office of No, and we're just a bunch of jerks, and we can't let them do anything. But now at where we have data centers where they can put their research infrastructure in that's secure and a safe environment, they're coming to us about, hey, we need to have CMMC certification. Can you help us do this? Blah, blah, blah. But the workforce development piece is something that we're really proud of what we've done at where we've taken student employees that have come from like physics and astronomy and forestry and all these other areas, and put them into these research facilitator type roles where they can speak the language of science, but they're also now learning the language of IT and helping us bridge that gap to where, our team of systems administrators who understand Linux and backend stuff, but they don't know jack about science, lack of better words. But these students who are actively in those research labs and actually understanding and how to do this, it's incredible to watch. And we have this young student, she's incredible. We did this demo with a couple of our tribal college partners as we onboard them onto our HPC resources. And she led this whole demo, and she was able to speak to the IT technical pieces, but also to the science. And one of the questions that came from one of our research faculty from a tribal college was, well, how does this impact my science? Where does this go? And she actually showed them like a full-blown simulation from her research in physics and astronomy, and it was really cool to see. And she's just she's a 19-year-old woman who's just doing incredible work. So it's really exciting stuff.
Great.
And I'd like to bring up the very beneficial mini conference that we had last week in Nevada. Sashi was there also, that Scotty arranged, bringing the researchers and the enterprise IT people together to talk about the different perspectives, because they're very different. Enterprise IT is about scale and reliability, which then requires consistency and conformity, whereas researchers are just scrambling to get whatever they can to enable their research and achieve their mission. So they come from very different perspectives, and it was great to see them talking together and working together and learning the other point of view. So it's not just about it's about reliability, which requires conformity and consistency. It's not just about, I'm going to do it on the side and try to avoid you guys. It's about, I need to get stuff done. I have deadlines and I need to find equipment or build equipment. There's no consistency, no conformity from the research side. So bringing them together just to start those conversations was a really beneficial thing for us to do. Thank you to Scotty.
Yeah, I'll bring up something and use a quote from somebody else in the community that I heard during a minority serving cyber infrastructure consortia meeting. The Internet 2 hosted, actually, and Bobby Clark from Clemson University was responding to a question from the members in that group about how do they really create a cyber infrastructure for research, and why would they even want to do it? Bobby's very simple answer, which just took me back to something we should all remember, is when we build the cyber infrastructure for research, we actually built everything that we need for the academy, everything that we need for our students, staff and faculty, and in fact, we create these opportunities to build off of for things like ideas like workforce development or incubators or things like that, partnerships with the community, partnerships across the state. They all kind of drive from that foundational thing of building it for research that sort of overserves everything in our infrastructure in a way to meet that high-end research need. So that really stuck for me, and Bobby's a great person. If you don't know him from Clemson University, reach out, but yeah, that's what I would add.
I was going to add a couple of things. There are a lot of lessons that can be learned through central IT and as well as research IT. There are a lot of commonalities. Just because you're doing research and you're using computational methodologies, you don't have to reinvent a CPU. You don't have to come up with the architecture. We can work together to create an environment that is economically, that can be supported. So the idea that I found is successful, and Zach talked about that, is to have people on your staff that understand the mission of the research, but they're much more versed about the architecture of the machines and the architecture, networking, storage, and computation, how they come together. And then be able to work with the researcher shoulder to shoulder, where the researcher has the discipline in the science about modeling and simulation, and the computational scientist, on the other hand, knows a lot more about the intimacies of the architecture of the resources we provide. And that marriage is a very successful collaboration between people who know IT and people who want to do science. And only if we put these two folks together, these two tribes, if I can use that, then magic happens. And that is a way to, because by the time a researcher figures out all the computational complexities and cyber infrastructure policies and data management plan, they're not spending time on the discipline expertise for which they were hired to do. So the idea is to be able to separate roles and responsibilities clearly, where both halves are actually contributing to the mission of the university. The other thing that's important to know is when you're creating computational capability is how are we putting these things together to advance the institution. It's not enough if the individual scientist or faculty member is successful. We also have to make sure that we have a higher mission to serve, which is the next generation of faculty or the younger faculty who's looking for tenure. They have a place to go. For example, when you hire somebody, we do not provide additional capabilities for that person for administrative work, but every time we hire a faculty who want to do research, we're back to the ground level talking about, okay, how can we help you, and starting the discussion from scratch rather than building on an infrastructure we already have in place to support research.
Did you have a follow-up there, Matt? Okay, all right. So the theme there in those responses was people. People and their roles. And people, it turns out, are really everything in the next iteration of what research computing and data is becoming. And the national community around this has been spending a lot of their time on the professional development aspects of these professionals that cross the boundaries, that are the boundary spanners between the hardcore science being done in labs and the IT infrastructure, and really bringing those things together. And, Dana Brunson here and company from Internet 2, kind of spoiler, right? They're sitting in the front row because research engagement is what they do. They have been supporting a lot of this development out in the community. And, I came from the science side. When I got exposed to this community of professionals and boundary spanners, I found it to be the most valuable thing I could have done, because it now gave me a language and a lexicon to go into both sides of the house and describe problems and find solutions and kind of be the go-between. And the more that we can do that, the better. And so now, building on kind of this concept of people, we really need to ask the question, this is kind of the elephant in the room. And so what are some legacy processes or cultures, that's a people thing, right, that pose challenges to research engagement from IT? And you can speak perhaps from past institutional experience rather than your current one, but however you would like to answer this. But I think this is something that we need to address head on, because if we don't and if we ignore it, we're going to be spinning our wheels at all scales.
Well, to refer back to the conversation of bringing them together, for enterprise IT or centralized IT, looking at a researcher who's got a server under the desk or whatever, that's so anti-cultural for us that it takes on a life of its own, where it becomes associated with any researcher, and it's back to the same answer, bringing them together to overcome those cultural impressions. Just like the researchers don't want to go ask IT for anything because they remember from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when IT kept saying, no, you can't do that, and then that was impeding their mission. So it is about the people and bringing them together to form a new culture together with a shared understanding. That sounds so beautiful.
Yeah, researchers, they may start with this idea that we're going to slow things down, and they don't want to get involved in anything that's going to slow research down. And so one of the things that I think we have to do, it goes back to people a little bit, is get out there and be with the research community in lots and lots of ways. And so at UIC, one of the things that we do many workshops, many events out of our research facilitation group. Also embedding in research teams, individual data scientists and HPC engineers will go and actually spend 3 or 4 weeks in a team, really demonstrating what they can do with their sort of access to enterprise infrastructure and the rest of the team, but also sort of building that rapport with the research community that is so needed to overcome these sort of cultural differences that might still exist. You know, I mean, how many times do we get to really work with a research faculty member? They're so busy. If the last time was 2 years ago and that person had an unfortunate experience, it might be, you know, it might be that you need to really be ready for the opportunity when it presents itself again, and find ways to get in front of that researcher. So those are some of the things that we do. Really being part of the community is probably the key.
Yeah, I think it comes down to relationship building with the people and doing it intentionally to where and follow through with promises. And we've seen this time and time again with research faculty where they'll get a grant and they say, oh, hey, by the way, I need this now. And you're like, where were you a year ago when you were writing this grant? And I think now we've flipped it, at least at UM, where we have research faculty coming to us and going, hey, I'm writing this grant. Are you okay with this? Can we do this? Can we change that? And that took a lot of years of relationship building and changing culture. We also have, I will say, at least from my experience, I have to thank a lot to the NSF and NIH and DoD and all these other people who are putting out really strict compliance rules now, where now we have faculty coming to us going, hey, I have to do this. How do I do this? And we're like, oh, wow, we can't do this with other academic faculty, but now we get to do this with science. So they get to feel a lot more pain as we roll things out to campus as far as from a security standpoint. So, but you know, it's one of those things where enterprise IT is around stability and having, you know, 99.9% uptime kind of deal, and research computing is more innovation and, you know, break stuff and buy cheap hardware and let it break and we'll go buy new hardware. And I think that was the funniest eye-opener for I have 2 senior Linux admins who work, you know, on very enterprise level hardware, and when we started taking over more of the research computing environment, and they started seeing some of the hardware that we were racking in the data center, and they were like, what the heck is this? We've never heard of this brand before. And they're like, there's no licenses for the iDRAC? What? So it's just, you know, it's a culture shock too for our enterprise IT folks, but it's people, and it's building those relationships over the course of the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I would just add in terms of learning from each other from central IT. The fact of the matter is now, as you submit a proposal, you have to have a cybersecurity plan, you have to have a data management plan. So we are in the process of writing those university-wide, so it could become a boilerplate for every single research proposal we submit. And that takes a lot of burden out of the hands of the researchers, and so they're very thankful. So there are areas where we can actually collaborate and reduce the burden on the researchers. So that's one. The second thing is the economies of scale. One of the things we are in negotiations with the provost and the president is to see how we can, you know, basically inject ourselves into the discussions of creating what I would call starter packages for new faculty. If they're computationally inclined, our recommendation is they set aside a percentage of that startup plan in terms of promoting what we call central computational capabilities and research opportunities. So that essentially will not only benefit the faculty that is being hired, but actually enhances the ability for the institution to provide and submit more proposals across many years. So in other words, every time I talk with a researcher, I tell them they have 2 responsibilities. One, of course, their own research, and then what are they doing to advance the status of the institution as a whole. I think we need to instill in them the responsibility of both those, because if the institution is stronger as part of their effort, it's much better when they submit a second proposal or other junior faculty submit more proposals along the same lines, because we have built out a reliable infrastructure that caters to the needs of research.
Okay, I'm going to move us to the next question because this might even dig in a little bit more to some challenges in culture that we see. For example, a lot of times IT staff who are professional faculty, if they're in that category at your institution, might be eligible to lead or co-lead or be senior personnel on grant proposals, believe it or not. And it turns out that if you dig around in your organization, there are going to be those creative and productive types that want to do that would like to be part of academia. And if we just give them that opportunity, some people might take that. And then you never know where it's going to end up. And so this question is, do you see IT and enterprise IT as co-participants in the academy? And if so, how can you keep IT staff innovative, motivated, and creative in that academic environment, knowing that you've got constant budget pressure, constant fires and emergencies, and comply with all the things, but at some point, we have to make space for this. And if we don't, we're going in the wrong direction. So how do we do that? How do we make space for this?
So I have a unique perspective because I started out as a student employee many, many years ago and kind of worked my way through. And so I very much value the experiential learning experience for a student that's going through getting their degree and then also being able to take advantage of working on real life environments. And that's really what we emphasize in changing our culture in IT is you're here for the student mission, but also the research faculty mission and letting them get through those things. So we, I think this last academic year, we had 5 IT professionals who were adjunct faculty across in several classes, including myself. I taught an MBA class. But being able to be part of the academic side and seeing the pains that maybe faculty experience from the enterprise IT, and a funny story was, I mentioned I was teaching an MBA class and my projector stopped working, and trying to call my own help desk staff to come troubleshoot took longer than expected. It was very. They put a ticket in. We'll get back to you. It was very humbling to say the least. So, but actually, it helped me because then standing in front of faculty senate and talking to faculty, it helps kind of be on the same level field where it's like, hey, I experience the same pains as you, so I get it. We can work through this together. The other thing too, and where we have a large student employee field where we pipeline them into specialized areas, cybersecurity, network, research, and so our IT professionals who for the longest time just do my 8 to 5, leave me alone, I'll be in my dungeon. Now they actually have to step out of the woodworks and actually be mentors to our students is something that they're actually now starting to really jump on and enjoy because, again, like they might not be faculty but in the classroom, but they're faculty to these students who are getting an education but then also working in real life experience. So
yeah, that's a great story.
So I would add to the fact that it's all about relationship, and Zach talked about that earlier. And the more relationships and more governance groups that you can be part of and you help facilitate, like we have a cyber infrastructure group made up of mostly all faculty, and I'm the chair of it, along with the vice president of research. He's his deputy is the co-chair. But we have faculty from all walks of life as part of that infrastructure committee. Then we have a university technology committee. So these are places where you can go and talk about the challenges of IT, listen to the challenges they face, and then come to an understanding of how we can provide better services. The other thing that I also feel is very important is in some places, we are missing the opportunity to provide undergraduate research education. And as we hire a lot of these same students eventually become our own employees, they're missing, and they might not have pursued a master's or a PhD degree, so they were never exposed to about research. And the only way you can instill some of the lessons learned through research, which is creative thinking, problem solving, and so on and so forth, and building on work on that others have started is really to have a very robust undergraduate research program in your curriculum, because that trains individuals to think a little differently. Yes, we need people that keeps stuff up, 9 nines and so on and so forth, but at some point they also have to be open to the idea of doing things differently. When I talk about cultural change, it's not only changing the hearts and minds of our constituents, it's also changing the hearts and minds of my own IT workforce.